Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Picks on Politics. I'm Ayana Harry, in for Dan Manarino. Over the last few weeks, we've gotten to know the crowded field of candidates competing for New York's newly drawn 10th congressional district. As a reminder, this district covers Lower Manhattan and sections of Brooklyn, including Park Slope and Sunset Park. Recent polling shows this race could go a number of ways, so today we're focusing on New York Assemblywoman Jo Anne Simon. This longtime Brooklyn resident has represented the 52nd Assembly District since 2015. Simon serves as the chair of the Subcommittee on Tuition Assistance Programs. Prior to that, she was the district leader and state committee woman for District 52. And Simon began her career as a disability rights attorney, even establishing a firm in downtown Brooklyn. And now Simon is looking to continue representing Brooklyn just under a new title, Congresswoman. And this morning she's going on the record. Assemblywoman Jo Anne Simon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing from you. You currently represent the 52nd district in the state assembly. Why set your sights on Congress now?
Well, as you may know, this is a district that was newly drawn about a little over 2 months ago. So I had not initially been planning on running for Congress, but the court had other things in mind when it created this district. And when I looked at the map of this district, I knew that I had worked as a community leader in every neighborhood on the Brooklyn side of this district, was really very well versed in the issues and really knew how to work with community, which in my mind is the most important thing. I believe we really need to bring the voices of New York 10 to DC, not the voices of DC to New York 10. And my experience, deep experience with community, organizing and working with them before I ever aspired to run for the assembly is key to my success.
Mentioning those deep ties, Assemblywoman, you know, you've been a Brooklynite for 40 years. You're not new to this district. So what do you think is the reason behind your lower profile so far in the polls compared to some of your District 10 competitors?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a lot of money in this race. I am actually somebody who is beholden to community, not to the real estate development community. I am not beholden to lobbyists or former Trump donors. And I'm not independently wealthy in the way that some of my opponents are. So, but the reality is that people on the ground are telling me something very different than these polls, many of which have been done internally by different campaigns. And there is a tendency by campaigns to characterize a poll and make a poll the questions, for example, to elevate their candidate. So I'm not daunted by that. If you look at the polls, it's very clear that the separation between the candidates is very small, and there's still a whole lot of voters that are undecided, and many more who don't realize that there's actually an election.
And in fact, I want to ask you about those undecided voters. What's your plan to connect with them? How do you get them to become voters for you?
Well, for one thing, by making sure that people know that there is an election. So we, of course, have done mailings. We've reached out to absentee voters early on, and we've been, working to make sure that they know that it's time to vote and that they get their absentee ballots, and that we engage with them. So we're doing phone banking, of course. We're doing mail. We're out on the street all the time talking to voters. And voters are telling me all the time that they're really grateful for the work I've done in my time in office and otherwise, and that they're voting for me. So, we're out there, we're talking to people, and people are spreading the word. And that's what we're doing. You know, those TV ads, for example, are reaching those lower information voters. I have the support of elected officials and of the clubs, the Reformed Democratic clubs here and in Manhattan. And those are the most activated voters. And they're the ones who will reach out to their community connections and encourage people to get out and vote.
And Assemblywoman, you know, I want to talk about a real pressing issue here in the city right now. Federal, state, and city officials, they've all declared monkeypox a public health emergency.
Sure.
So as a member of Congress, what steps would you take to improve vaccine access within the district?
Well, clearly, a big part of that is information. That is something I'm doing already as an assembly member. And I have, in fact, participated in letter writing efforts, for example, to encourage the governor to declare and a state of emergency, and in fact to ask the U.S. Government to declare a state of emergency, which just happened. So part of that is also raising that voice and talking about, listen, we need a better supply chain for vaccines. We, again, missed the boat, didn't anticipate that this was going to be a seriously infectious disease. And so we're behind the 8 ball right now. So what you need as an elected representative is to raise the voices of your communities and to make sure that everybody in the government at all levels knows what it is we need to do. And that is, we need to improve the production of vaccines, we need to improve that supply chain, and we need to improve the delivery of vaccines. We're finally getting more vaccines here in New York, but we really have been the epicenter of monkeypox. And we're working very hard every day to ensure that people get access to those vaccines.
And I also want to talk about, an issue that impacts so many New Yorkers. Some of the most expensive neighborhoods to live in across the city are actually located right there within District 10. So as a state assembly member, how did you help renters afford to stay in their homes? And is there anything you'd be able to do to help tenants as a member of Congress?
Well, one of the things that we have provided in the state and have advocated for is additional funding, for example, for NYCHA, but also additional funding to help people who have been impacted by COVID, having that moratorium, having the ability for us to help subsidize the rents that the landlords need in order to operate their properties. But we need tremendous amounts of money from the federal government to housing. And to NYCHA, for sure, there's $40 billion of repairs that are needed, but we also need money for other programs, and we need to open up those funding streams that allowed New York to create the wonderful programs like Mitchell-Lama, for example, to fund supported housing, which is so important for people who really are at risk for homelessness, but if they have a little support, they can live independent lives and support that. So there's a lot of funding streams we need to open up, and open up to not-for-profit developers as well.
And Assemblywoman, we have so many topics that I want to get to, but we're beginning to run out of time. I also want to talk about, this summer, it's been called the summer of struggles, with so many feeling that financial squeeze caused by inflation. So do you believe there are steps that Congress can and should take to help ease inflation?
Well, there are steps Congress can take, and certainly I believe this new package that will be voted on in the coming days really addresses a lot of those issues. Inflation is caused by many things, and the president doesn't cause inflation, Congress doesn't cause inflation, but we can act in a way that exacerbates that. So we're really looking at minimizing the inflation, and of course, we all know that there's a war in Ukraine, which has had a great deal to do with the rise in inflation. So we have to be there to help communities. We have to be there to provide them with the support that they need, whether that is food, whether that is access to health services. And of course, we have to provide access to abortion care, which is a critical issue in our state as well as around the country, and be there here in New York State and help from a congressional point of view, ensure that people have access to abortion care.
Assemblywoman Simon, thank you so much for joining us this morning.